My name is Rob Lim and I am a proud graduate from Asbury Seminary from the class of 2023. I currently am the Assistant Professor of Business at Asbury University and their Director of Strategic Partnerships. I finished my last class at Asbury Seminary in December 2022 and I commenced as a full-time faculty member in January 2023. So I feel awfully humbled and privileged to have come in at the last moment. I often tell my friends that I feel like the last worker that's collected their wage in the parable that Jesus shared. Well, I was in class teaching on the 8th and I heard about how chapel just kept going. And admittedly, notwithstanding that this was wonderful news, I just left it at that this was a nice, good, spiritual fervor that was coming out from our students. But little did I know that this was going to run for 16 extraordinary days. I remember as I was teaching in an afternoon class at 1 p.m. and a number of my students were very agitated in the room. You could tell that they didn't want to be there, which was quite unusual. Some of my best students were moving around and I asked them what was going on and they said they had just left chapel where they had stayed and remained for extended worship, but they didn't want to leave, but they made sure that they were in my class. However, halfway through my class at 1:30 p.m, I had a number of students barge into the classroom and they weren't there to tell us to evacuate or anything along those lines, but they were telling us to go to Hughes Auditorium because revival had broken. I remember as I walked down to Hughes Auditorium very early on the 8th of February, I was astounded by the simplicity of the event. Everything was so subdued. There was no technology, there was no electrical guitars, there was no PowerPoint, but there was this fervor, there was this energy that was emanating from the students. It was as if every single word that they were declaring was directly lifted up to the Lord to hear. It wasn't just sung for the sake of singing. It was true worship, authentic worship without any bells and whistles. During the outpouring, I had the utmost privilege of being involved in the prayer ministry. And there was a very unique posture that was held by Asbury University at that time. That was a posture of humility. People that were interceding in the hidden place for what was happening above. People that were interceding for people at the altar as we saw chains break, as we saw people healed, as we saw people grasp and hold on to the gospel as their own for the first time. And one of the wonderful things that I saw just develop during the outpouring was this continual partnership, this unity between institution, between the university and the seminary, and all the churches within the region. In fact, there was a phrase that was often said during the revival, that revival runs on the track of relationships. And that was very much manifest during those days as you saw people that knew each other relationally in the little town of Wilmore rally together to uphold what God was doing in their midst. That this was not a work that we could manufacture, but this was a work that God had done, and we were invited as a community and with all the relationships that were laid to come alongside his work. In fact, as I even think about the two institutions and how God had manifest himself in such a dramatic way at Asbury University amongst the students and lift up Gen Z and all of the staff there, including myself, that we had the humble honor of serving there alongside with many locals from the surrounding community. That Asbury Seminary itself, I like to think of it, held a role of providing theological rigor. Having a number of the professors on this side of the road, a number of professors that I've studied under, being able to write and talk and testify about it with theological depth for fellow academics was absolutely God ordained. Having the right people in the right place to be able to ensure that this outpouring wasn't just something that was limited based on our own means, but was elevated to the ends of the earth, utilizing all the gifts of the community, including what the seminary held. In fact, one of my favorite memories of this outpouring was seeing seminary professors come alongside a number of the community members at Asbury University and serve together. That act of unity is paramount in the kingdom of God, and we continue to press into that daily, knowing that the outpouring did not end at Woolmore, but this spirit of unity, this spirit of humility continues to extend to the ends of the earth. What God did at Asbury University was remind us of many things, but I'd like to distill them into 4 main themes itself. The first was radical humility. It's funny that we need to have the word radical attached to the word humility because we have lost essence of what humility actually means. During the outpouring, there was this continual posture set before us by the Asbury University community, which I'm so thankful to be part of, that held this manifestation of God in a very loose way. How often do we see that in today's society? Willing to let go of our agendas, let go of our controls, let go of our programmatic agendas to let God work. By the way, it wasn't in a disorderly manner too, that there was an orderliness to it, that it was done in a way that was of utmost respect, that it reminded me of what Isaiah said, that who am I? Woe to me, for I'm a man of unclean lips, that there's a reverence to the Lord, and thus we're just impostors of humility. That was the spirit of what God was doing in Hughes Auditorium. One of my favorite stories was seeing a number of influential staff at Asbury University moved themselves into true postures of servanthood, to serve utter strangers into the wee hours of the night, to ensure that they too were able to witness and experience what God was doing in our midst. Another theme that was so prevalent was that call of holiness, which we all know very well within the town of Woolmore. In fact, right in the back of Hughes Auditorium, above the altar, you'll see this phrase that says, "Holiness unto the Lord." And it was as if the Lord was taking what was written on the top of Hughes Auditorium and pouring it across the communities that were gathered there. This call to holiness is not something that we hear about today, is it? It's something that we relegate to ancient history books or a bygone era, but I really believe what God was releasing at that time was a reminder of not only His holiness, but His call for us to be holy as He is holy. Not in a moralistic way to follow rules, but in a way that brings us joy, that brings us flourishing, that brings us fulfillment and contentment because we are like the Lord. Another very big theme was that concept of unity. And as mentioned many times by many people, just seeing so many people assembled in one area of every tribe and tongue, of multitudes of different denominational angles of the church come together in unison and worship the Lord, it was extremely powerful. It reminded me of Revelation 7:9, that every tribe and tongue are gathered declaring salvation belongs to our God. Not only that, but seeing many people come together that were stewards of this outpouring, seeing volunteers come together, the Asbury University and the Asbury Seminary community come together as one, recognizing that we could not do this without the help of others, seeing church members and pastors and community leaders gather together to serve the multitude that came. It demonstrated that people were hungry and thirsty even to this age, and the same old ancient antidote of humility and unity and love still manifests true today. The final theme that was so clear was one of love. Now, when I speak about love, it's something that is often quoted about when we think about relationships. But what I want to talk about here is the love associated with that of the Father. There were so many times when I was up at the altar and I saw people come to the front and were just absolutely overwhelmed with the love of the Father, that they were just saturated in love that they've never experienced before, the grace-filled water that was flowing but from the Spirit at that time, and seeing people being willing to submit themselves before that love and experience it as their own. The Lord was telling people and assuring them, "You are my child, you are my daughter, you are my son." And seeing people grasp that at the altar at Hughes Auditorium was extremely special, especially as God was doing it in such an accelerated fashion and touching so many lives over those beautiful 16 days.